Let's talk about our boy Kyle. Let's talk about Big Seltzer. Let's talk about the man of the hour. Listen, Kyle Kulinski has been a huge influence on this podcast, but we've always called the balls and strikes, right? We just did a clip the other day where we leveled some criticisms, we gave him some praise, right? We try and be real neutral when it comes to evaluating people that we admire and are friendly with. And I got to give him some flowers right now because at one point I was like, dude, you are not streaming. You're not doing all of these things. Like, I didn't think it was going to ever start to turn around. And he just completely believed in the path that he had chosen for himself. And it worked out so well. And again, I find myself still really learning from Kyle and really learning from his career in a different way now that I kind of look up to him as a more successful colleague than I'll ever be. Obviously, I wouldn't put myself in the same breath as Kyle, but to have somebody to kind of look up to and be like, wow, if you stay your own path and you just do what you believe in, like the audience will come around and reward you for it.
Yep. I think that's a great way to put it, Zach. And it's so true. It's so beautiful to see consistency rewarded, right? A lot of people, as we've talked about before, will convince you. They'll tell you that the only way to actually make it in any given industry, but specifically in media, is to sell out. Oh yeah, you'll build up an audience, but eventually you kind of, you got to go where the winds are blowing and you got to suck up to these corporate sponsorships. And, if you want to be serious, if you really want to have a career, this is what you got to do. Kyle's career and the trajectory of Secular Talk is actually proof of exactly the opposite. Kyle, as he loves to brag about, has never had a conversation with a sponsor or an advertiser. And he's truly never sold out. He's honestly remained consistent in a way that very few people in the space surrounding him have. I mean, if you take a look at where he's at and where his channel is at compared to where it was at when I started watching Kyle back in the day, 2015 or something like that, it's very similar content, right? He's very much still on the same beats. Obviously, everyone has evolution, right? Everyone adapts to the current circumstance. But I would say out of everyone, Kyle's message has remained consistent, truly consistent. He's never been one of those people that's kind of vulnerable to going where the winds are blowing, right? There's a lot of commentators, including Jimmy Dore, who we're about to get into, who's, very vulnerable to that. They get terrified of a lull in views or attention, and they start chasing different rabbit holes, right? The vaccine one with Jimmy being the main thing. But yeah, as you see here, Kyle Kulinski, 1.47 million subscribers. It seems like just yesterday, Zach, that Kyle hit 1 million subscribers. The road to 1 million took so long for Kyle. There was, time where it was, going in reverse, where he's actually, losing subs on a weekly basis, where every single week Secular Talk actually had less and less subs, but he turned things around, and that is all now being rewarded. Like I said, he's officially caught Jimmy Dore, who also has 1.47 million. I have a feeling any day Kyle will officially surpass the Jimmy Dore show.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy, guys. It has been less than 2 years since Kyle hit 1 million subs. He hit 1 million subs on March 23rd, 2023. This guy started his YouTube channel in 2008. He's been doing it full time since 2012. Okay. It was 11 years since he started doing the show as a full-time occupation that he grounded out to 1 million subs. As a lot of people who were his peers, his colleagues, his closest people to reach out to in the industry were kind of talking shit on him. They were kind of poking fun out of it. Right. And he was like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to do my own thing. This is what I've always done. I turn on my camera. I give the take that I have on the news, and I go home, or I golf, or I see my family, or I do whatever. Right. For him to go up 500,000 subs almost, it probably will be 500,000 subs over 2 years. That's incredible growth. And guys, it proves something that I think the left really needs to reckon with. There was a lot of people who were excusing their own poor performance on YouTube as somehow being the result of the algorithm suppressing them. There was a lot of cop-outs that came from people all over the place saying, oh, YouTube doesn't promote our content like it used to. We can't win. Oh my God, the YouTube's suppressing us. We can't win. Well, the conservatives figured out how to do it. And Kyle was like, I'm going to figure out how to do it too. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to talk about the stories that interest me because I know there are other people like me out there. And he said, I found them once and I'll find them again and I'll continue to find them. And if you guys remember back to the Politicon, where Kyle had the longest line out of fucking anybody there, man. It was a crazy YouTube video that you could watch back in the day of everybody like waiting all the way down the line to take a picture with Kyle fucking Kulinski, man. He's earned every bit of this. And so as somebody who is an up and comer, I guess, in the same field, it truly is inspiring to watch. And I got nothing but love and flowers for Kyle. We're going to give him some congratulations when he comes on the show on Monday. I'm hoping that he's at 1.5 by then so we can talk about it with him. But truly a big come up for the guy.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And as you guys can see here, if we look at Social Blade, his channel is doing well. The subscriber, gains are consistent. It seems like every week more and more people are actually finding his content, which is a big deal. And yeah, I think that it's interesting, Zach. We talked a lot about people blaming the algorithm, people blaming YouTube for the lack of their channel growth. And, for a while, Kyle did talk a lot about adpocalypse, the ramifications of the, perceived tweaks to the algorithm. He would float theories about how there were different algorithms, right, for content creators like him who were anti-establishment and then more corporate friendly channels, right? So I think there's a time where Kyle did sort of dabble in that talk, and some of it was probably quite legitimate. He would know as someone who's been on the platform for, longer than any of us. But I think that it's fair to say he totally overcame those hurdles. He's totally, survived in the long run. And what I think is kind of interesting, right? Because Kyle was the chief Bernie bro. There was even a Jacobin article, I think, written about Kyle that was called like When Kyle Kulinski Talks, the Bernie Bros Listen.
Great piece. He still cites a chunk of it in his every single description of Secular Talk.
Yep, it was a great piece. I think, some people probably found out about Secular Talk through that article. But Kyle was the chief Bernie bro, or at least one of the chief Bernie bros. And after the Bernie momentum came to an end, after the Bernie movement ended in 2024, it left a people like Kyle in a very weird place. Not just political commentators, not just hosts of channels, but actual supporters, voters, people like us that didn't really know what the heck to do with ourselves, with our energy, with our political, ambitions and aspirations as far as the movement went. It was a weird period of time, and it led, weaker men to go in different, less impressive routes, right? What did Jimmy Dore do when that energy dried up? Well, he basically ran down the anti-vax, rabbit hole as quickly as he could. He freaked out when he realized that all that energy was gone and he would have to find something else to talk about in 2020. Because again, you have to keep in mind, Joe Biden had just become elected the president of the United States. There's no more boring era in American politics to be a political commentator, specifically coming after two very exciting Bernie Sanders presidential campaigns, right? Now, all of a sudden, Joe Biden's the president, and your prospects, you're looking down, 4 years of talking about that, talking about the infrastructure bill, talking about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and, all this boring shit, right? So again, people like Jimmy Dore, they got distracted and said, well, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to make my money pandering to people who want to hear about insane conspiracy theories and anti-vax crap and the World Economic Forum and, all this tinfoil hat kind of bullshit, right? Other people like David Pakman, who also really came up during the Bernie era, they decided basically, I'm just going to become a Democrat Party propagandist. I'm just going to become a nut hugger of the Democratic establishment, which landed him in the Oval Office recently. We all saw the picture. But that was the other path. There was the Jimmy path, and then there was kind of the David Pakman path, where it was like, all right, Bernie's over. There's not going to be a revolution. Time to just become a PR man for the Democratic Party, whoever their candidate is. Kyle took neither of those routes. He was a supporter of freaking Marianne Williamson. When it came time for the primary, he was like, fuck Joe Biden, anyone but Joe Biden. Let's get behind Marianne Williamson. Let's talk about the options. Let's actually be a left flank thorn in the side of the Democratic Party, which is based. And again, he's been rewarded. He's doing better than Jimmy Dore or David Pakman now.
100%. Two things I want to talk about. One is your point about David Pakman, right? Because I think we've talked a lot about Jimmy Dore, but we don't explore the David Pakman route that a lot of people took post Bernie. And I think it is reflective in hindsight of how powerful Bernie was. because
Yeah.
guys like David Pakman and guys like Jimmy Dore and at one point, guys like Dave Rubin, Anna Kasparian, Cenk Uygur, they saw where the momentum was going and they said, damn, this is the horse that I want to bet on because it's going to be good for my career. Now, that's disgusting and selfish, of course, and we would need to unpack that, right? We need to talk about how we learned that a guy, it almost blows my mind that David Pakman came up as a Bernie Sanders guy because I never watched his show back then.
It's hard to imagine.
He's always been like a milquetoast liberal MSNBC wannabe to me, as I view him, indistinguishable from the Pod Save America guys, indistinguishable from the Vox Media guys. That's how I've always viewed David Pakman, a guy who will cheerlead for the Democrats no matter what kind of horrors they're doing. And then he doubled down as a fucking Zionist when October 7th happened. So I was like tuning out his opinions forever. But we have to talk about how that is reflective of the left winning. Okay, that's how we know we're gaining traction again. That's how we know we're gaining momentum again, right? And I think we have a long way to go, but Kyle turning around and saying, you know what, guys, I felt lost too. Sorry, our lighting is a little weird. It happens to us every day around 2:15. I know we're aimless, but I'm going to march on. You guys just have to march on with me. And we're going to see a lot more people who, a lot more people who, kind of get on board with the left again. And we have to make sure that we don't get duped by as many individuals as maybe we did last time. But we also have to understand that part of winning is getting the less sincere people to repeat what you were saying.
Oh, totally. Totally. It kind of reminds me of when it looked like Bernie was going to win the primary in 2020. And all of a sudden, Bill de Blasio is a Bernie bro. Remember that?
Actually, dude. No, exactly.
Yeah, he thought Bernie was going to win. So he wanted to be on the winning team. And that is a big part of politics. We saw it with Trump, right? How many people that used to hate Trump, all of a sudden they want to be a part of the winning team. That is a huge aspect of the game of politics. It has to be discussed. I think you're 100% right to acknowledge that, Zach. It's why I've been saying for a while that more than anything, if we're ever going to get back to that place, as much as some of us hate to admit it, we do need a leader. And not just us, but people, voters. Like for them to look at the left as a thing they want to be a part of, they do need like a figurehead, a leader. It's why folks like Joe Rogan all of a sudden started flirting with leftism when Bernie Sanders was that leader. Because people were like, oh yeah, I want to follow that guy. We don't necessarily need someone to follow. We're firm in our ideologies. We understand what's right and wrong, and we have principles. But a lot of people, they're just like, who's the most compelling leader to follow? You know what I'm saying? Who's a fucking cult can I be a part of, right? And we do need to harness that for good.
Absolutely. And if you don't do that, you cede it to the other team. And I think that's the other thing. It's kind of a binary, right? People don't like to understand that right now, we don't have to forever. We could dig our way out eventually. I'm an optimist. But right now, we're living in a binary system where the media, alternative media, independent media, it doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, it's all the same now. It's going to break left or it's going to break right. Right now, it's breaking right really badly.
Yep.
Okay. And it allows two things to happen. One, it allows people like Jimmy Dore, Cenk Uygur, even if he's able to pull it off, I doubt it. Anna Kasparian, I think will have more success. These people to just run to the right. Say, this is where, there's open season. This is where there's fertile ground to be mined right now. People just want to have their views affirmed back to them. A lot of the time, that's the laziest and cheapest form of commentary, okay? There's a huge lane for people to do that, and they're taking it. But it also opens the door for people like David Pakman to just embrace the Democratic Party wholeheartedly and not have any legitimate criticisms for them, even though they completely wasted the opportunity to have the NLRB controlled by Democratic appointees for 2 more years, right? They were like, whoopsies, Kamala Harris just couldn't be bothered to show up. And it's like, yeah, dude, do you think that happens to have anything to do with her brother-in-law being an executive for Uber, who does not want that to happen? Hello. Whatever, right? It makes sense. We know that the Democratic Party is corrupt. That has to be something that we reason with. But it allows people like David Pakman to be like, well, we don't even have time to talk about that. We have to talk about the right. You know what I mean? So it allows the Democrats to get away scot-free. We're not challenging them. We're not making them better. We're not making them more likely to win, because we know the more populist, working class, and socialist ideas that they adopt, the more likely they are to win. Embrace Medicare for all, embrace a living wage, embrace building bridges and roads, embrace making our schools better, embrace giving teachers a raise. These are the kind of things that will win.
Yep, 100%. 100%. I'm also really excited to continue the conversation with Kyle about who should be the Democratic nominee in 2028, because he's really been beating this drum of Jon Stewart, right? Jon Stewart should be the nominee in 2028. I agree with that. Not necessarily Jon Stewart himself. I'm not under the illusion that we're going to get our way in that sense. I don't actually think Jon Stewart's probably going to run, unfortunately. But I do agree with Kyle's analysis that it needs to be someone who can actually sort of match the celebrity that Donald Trump represents. Donald Trump is an icon of American culture, and I don't think that any neoliberal Democrat is going to be able to actually take out MAGA. I think, Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, all these kind of manager types, right? It doesn't seem like any of them would actually be up to the job. I mean, maybe they could defeat like a JD Vance or something like that. But I like where Kyle's head is at, and that he actually understands that you need to fight fire with fire, and that, part of creating a populist opposition to Donald Trump, it could mean selecting an untraditional candidate. And to me, that doesn't have to be a celebrity. It could also be Sean Fain, someone who doesn't necessarily come from the swamp, but from a traditional background, someone who's proven their capacity to be a leader. I'm really excited to have that discussion with Kyle. And it's one of the instances where I think he's kind of, proving like his headspace is in a more interesting place than someone like a David Pakman or the Pod Save America guys who just want to talk about Pete Buttigieg, Gretchen Whitmer, all these kind of standard neoliberal flavored Democrats. Kyle's, I appreciate where his head is at strategically. That also might be a part of the reason why people enjoy his show, because it actually seems like he has a plan. He wants to have these conversations about how we're going to win, how we're going to take down MAGA and restore some level of normalcy and, leftist populism to this country instead of the insane fascism we have right now. But I mean, it's exciting stuff to see his channel growing. And not only did he catch up with Jimmy Dore, Zach, but he's actually getting pretty close to catching up with Sam Seder over at the Majority Report as well. As you see here, Majority Report currently has 1.64 million subs. And as we mentioned, Kyle has 1.47 million subs. And he gained that 500,000 way quicker than I was expecting, which again leads me to believe it won't be long before he catches up to Majority Report either.
100%, dude. He's going to be the new kingpin of the progressives, right? He's going to be the guy that leads the way. I think that he's got more subscribers than Breaking Points, right? And they're, another hot big show. Obviously, he's married to Crystal, who runs Breaking Points, but you know what I'm talking about? Like,
you're right. He beat Breaking Points.
He surpassed Breaking Points. He is the new guy, and I don't think
Sagar is seething.
anybody's talking about it in a way that they should be. You know what? Who was the one that ended up attracting the most people? It was the guy who was reasonable. It was the guy who kept his footing on progressive issues, but he was like, listen, guys, I'm going to call balls and strikes. I'm not an ideologue. When the rubber hits the road, I will probably vote for Joe Biden. Or if I don't vote for him, I'm still going to tell you he's the better option out of the two. He's not going to gaslight you into thinking that MAGA is just as bad as the Democratic Party. He's not going to gaslight you into thinking that the Democratic Party is actually based when they're not being based, right? He's going to talk about how it was awesome that Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan and it was horrible. Basically every other piece of foreign policy that Joe Biden did, right? Basically every other piece of foreign policy that Joe Biden did was a disaster. But we have to also call balls and strikes and say, hey, at the time when he was just pulling out of Afghanistan and getting dragged through the mud by mainstream media, you have to be like, well, that's actually what I wanted him to do. You have to give him credit for that. That model of content creation that Kyle is trailblazing, I think is going to be the most effective going down the line. And I'm hoping people like Mike Figueredo, who are in a similar kind of lane where they make really well-educated, really well-articulated videos that are polished and released. We're seeing a big surge for the Humanist Report. Mike's been doing great work over there. I believe he passed 500,000 subscribers, if I'm not mistaken, Gavin.
Yep.
Which is crazy. Shout out to Mike. That's a dude that's always been so nice to us, so kind to us, even when he had no reason to be, even when we were just this super tiny channel. He reached out to us and was really encouraging. We always call him Uncle Mike. This dude's been so cool to us, and to watch him grow has also been extremely exciting. And it just shows that these rational, committed, authentic leftists are going to continue to be the cream that rises to the top. And we're the gutter guard over here, so we're never going to exactly be the talking heads of the progressive movement. But I think it's really good that guys like Mike and Kyle are.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there.